I found pre-war cards, and that was like injecting rocket fuel in my veins.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of GOAT Collecting. I'm joined tonight by a very special friend, Mr. Matt, Straight Race Cards. How you doing tonight, Matt?
Man, Kyle, it is so good to be here. I have been a big fanboy of the GOAT Collecting, and just been so fun to see, you get to interview and showcase so many great collections of so many great players. So just love what you're doing here, and then just with your channel, man. It's been awesome.
I appreciate that. Likewise with you, your channel, ever since we've met, we've hit it off pretty well. And obviously Mike Moynihan has been pushing us to do content together for a while as well. And I'm glad we're able to get this chance to do this, because, I think I can speak for pretty much most of the YouTube collecting community. You are one of the most genuine human beings in the hobby, and that I have ever met, and that is where your collection, in my opinion, really blossoms, because what you're going to see tonight, for those of you watching, in my previous videos for this series, typically you've seen about one player that's showcased, because that's what somebody hyper focuses on, and that's what they collect, and that's perfect. But with Matt's collection, he collects true to himself. Very genuine person that finds meaning in everything, and that is highlighted so well in his collection, and that's what I can't wait to get into here.
Well, it's awesome. Well, I just appreciate your kind words, Kyle. Yeah, I think you nailed it. I do try to collect where every single card has meaning, because I feel like it's one thing to buy a piece of cardboard, and it's another thing to have a story really come to life, and it just brings so much more appreciation. At least for me, everyone's got their own collecting journey and their own collecting focus, but for me, it's been so fun to really go to the drawing board and dream up, what are cards and who are players that I can look at and remind myself of, either great, character traits, or just men and women that were really excellent at their sport, or, all kinds of things. But it's been so fun to do. I know my collecting journey has really kind of gone all over the place, and started, I was in deep, pre-war land in the T206 world when I started, but it's completely blossomed into all kinds of, I kind of like to give the analogy of a tree, that is blossoming, and just different, branches and things are sprouting everywhere. And I think there's such a beauty in that collecting, is that, especially being on YouTube and in this community, we can watch other people collect other things, and then it sparks this amazing, imagination, and then we're off to the races, because there's, some other, cards that we get really excited about. So it's been really fun, and yeah, I'm excited to showcase kind of an eclectic, but what I think is a collection that is pretty cohesive. Like you said, to me, it's not going to make sense really to anyone else, but it does to me, and that's why, I love it. I'm so grateful.
And that's the whole point of the hobby. Collect what you love, because that's what makes a collection special. So awesome. Well, I believe you have 3 categories that you wanted to showcase, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so there's 3 kind of overarching categories that have been, kind of the anchors, the starting places of my collecting facets. You know, again, like I said, those have blossomed into all kinds of different venues, but they have really been kind of the anchors to my collecting as of today. And so, you know, very high level, like, you know, like I said, when I got back into the hobby around 2019 or 2020, I found pre-order cards, and that was like injecting, you know, rocket fuel in my veins. I was off to the races, wanted to go after the monster. I know a few of you are, and it's been so fun to watch. I am
Shout
a
out
failed
Jake, Legends Never Die.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a failed monster collector. I think I got around 40 cards, and just realized that, you know, I didn't really want whatever it was, 475 commons to take up my card budget. So I pivoted, and as I was, you know, dreaming up the next project, I have a background in track and field and cross country, and so I had no idea that, you know, track cards existed. And so when I learned that there was a such thing as a track card, my head about exploded, because it just, you know, I was like, man, there's so many different things and avenues that I could go down here. But, you know, one of the biggest things in my childhood, and still to this day, something that's very, very near and dear to me, is the movie Chariots of Fire. If anyone has seen it, from 1981. It's a story, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a story that depicts, you know, two track athletes, Eric Little and Harold Abrahams, as they both go on a quest for a gold medal in the 1924 Olympic Games. And alongside of them, there's kind of four main guys in that movie. And so it is a movie that I watched every night before I would race in high school and in college and post-college as well. This just meant the world to me. And so I thought, I wonder if any of these guys have cards. And so to my joy and delight, I did find some of those cards. So I'll start there. I've got, so there's four main athletes. So the first one I was going to go after, I knew there was a bunch of cards. One of the very first track and field cards I got was Harold Abrahams, and here is his Joffrey Phillips. I think this is from 1929. Yep. And then, you know, he has several. He's one of the easier guys to get, so he's got some really cool. This is a 19. I think this is a 36 personality set. There's a really cool 24 Gallagher set that has him long jumping, which is cool. So anyway, so was able to get Abraham. So that knocked off one out of the four. So I was already well on my way. And I thought this is going to be a pretty easy adventure if it goes as fast as it did for collecting Harold Abrahams. And so the next guy I knew had cards was, you know, one of the minor guys of the four guys, but it was from the movie Lord Lindsay, but his real name was Lord Burleigh. And so he's also got another card in that Joffrey Phillips set. So I snagged that, and then he also has that same 36 personality set. And then there's a few others that I grabbed of his. So I was, again, doing really well. 2 out of 4. Like, this is awesome. Going really well. And then that's when it got really, really tough, because I didn't think that cards of Eric Little, who's my hero, or Aubrey Montague, who's a relatively obscure steeplechaser, I didn't think those existed. So I thought the project was kind of dead. I could get, you know, non-playing days cards of theirs, but I just didn't quite fit the bill. But as I did more research, there's some amazing websites out there, and I ran across a website you're probably familiar with. It's called prewarcards.com. Anson Whaley, shout out.
Yep.
And I ran into this 1924 Gallagher set. I showed the Abrams earlier, and I was looking through the checklist, and I realized the reason why I could never find a little card was because the name is actually misspelled on his card. And so on every checklist, there was no Eric Littles with 2 L's. It was just Liddle. So this was the Grail card. And I, you know, once I had found it, I was like, okay, it's one thing to know it exists, but now I got to go find it. So I sent a prayer out on Net54, and a collector who was a chess collector of all people in Canada Said, "Oh yeah, I've got a complete set because there are a bunch of chess players in that set. Why don't you name your price and I'll give you the Abrahams and Little." So I threw out $60 and he accepted. And for a hop, skip, and a jump, I was 3 out of 4 cards done with my set.
That's
And
awesome.
so then I was like, okay, I'm good now. Like I've really done all I could. But I was searching in the deep crevices of the internet. There was a website. It was called like ukfootballcards.eu or something, like some website that looked like it was straight out of 1992. Right when the internet was created. I don't think it's been changed since. But I ran across this really interesting set called the 1922 Bunsen Confectionery. And in that set, there's actually a E.A. Montague, which is my guy, Evelyn Aubrey Montague. Didn't even give him his name, but they do have his last name in there. And so I negotiated with this dealer in London, way overpaid. Anyone, would probably never want to pay close to $200 for a card, except for me. And so this guy shipped in from England. Obviously, it was raw. I sent it into SGC, and I personally had to send them all this evidence of why this is a real set, why this exists.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's never been graded by any grading companies. This is a very obscure set. I've never even seen another card from the set. There's a massive set, though. Apparently, it's got 700 cards, and they're mostly cricket athletes. There's actually a Abrams card in that set, but again, just the journey that it took me to go down that rabbit hole to find those 4 cards was so meaningful because, again, no one on the planet is going after a playing days run of the Big Four from Chariots of Fire. But for me, that was such a personal journey because it connected so deeply with who I am as a person, who I am as a runner. And so to finish that set, it was just like absolute magic. And I was on an absolute high from finishing that set. And so to kind of transition to the next facet of my collecting journey, I thought to myself, man, what do I do next? And so it was interesting because I was trying to figure out, I was kind of gone down the pre-war rabbit hole. It was a little bit too expensive for my budget at the time. And I started to look into this thing that they called, post-war golden age cards. Never heard of it in my life. But then I realized there were some really amazing sets. And so I went on to Trading Card Database because I didn't know any of the sets at that time. And I just started kind of scrolling through and looking through, what are some of my favorite sets? Is it 52? Is it 56? Or, 60s? There's all kinds of great stuff. And so I landed on 56. So I was working on a 56 Topps Hall of Fame run, something that I'm still working on. But one thing I really wanted to do was I didn't just want one card or one set. I wanted to kind of open the floodgates and learn a lot because I really didn't know much. So I thought a player run would be perfect for that. And so I was like, okay, so what player do I go after? I don't know a whole lot about this era. So I started doing some research, and part of my parameters were, I want someone that doesn't break the budget. Like, sorry, Mickey Mantle, like great player, but a little bit too rich for my blood in this current season of life.
Although you did find a Mantle adjacent to collect, which we'll get to later on, I'm sure.
Yeah. There are some ways to collect some goats without breaking the bank, for sure. But I was trying to find a man of integrity, high character, who still, really had an excellent career. And so I was looking through all the names, and I stumbled across Al Kaline. Why Al Kaline? I'm not a Tigers fan. I've got no connection to them at all. But I found this article from spring training from a few years back, and I read this story about Al Kaline when he was in his late, kind of towards the very end of his life. He would still show up. He used to show up in full uniform in his 70s to spring training, ready to go. Legendary. But, later in his life, he'd still show up to spring training. and there was, some minor league players, kind of the nobodies that were also at camp. And there was this young man that was sitting by himself in the middle of the cafeteria. And Kaline goes over to him and puts his arm around him and basically says, "Hey, guy, like, you're my guy now. I'm going to invest in you and pour into this nobody." And he spent every day of spring training with this kid and just mentored him and encouraged him. And the kid didn't end up making it to the big leagues, but Kaline stayed in touch with him throughout his career, and they talked on the phone. And right before he passed, a week before he passed, this ball player, I even forgot what the kid's name was, he said, "I had this voicemail from Al Kaline just encouraging me." And that was kind of his lasting legacy of, Kaline was much more than just this excellent ball player. He was a guy that invested in his team, the Tigers. Heck, he was Mr. Tiger, but he was also a guy that cared about the person more than he did, just the name on the jersey. And so to me, that was liquid gold, and I was sold on Kaline. And so I began working on his run, and got to finish his run at Strongsville with you this year. So that was really special. I'll show a few cards. This is that rookie, the 54 tops that I picked up this year. So grateful to own that card. Really special.
Such a great example.
Especially in these younger years, those like first 4 or 5 younger years, just that young, spry Kaline, like the 55 Bowman is beautiful. When you can find a centered 55 tops, it's really just a gorgeous card. And then my favorite set, it was kind of the double whammy, getting a Kaline as well as a 56 that checked multiple boxes. Just such a beautiful set. And then he's got such a great run, though, is that you get to collect 54 all the way through 74 or 75 if you include his highlights card. But he's got some great 70s cards as well. And then the last I'll show is his 68 tops. But then there's also what's great about player collecting a golden age player is that you can go after some oddball stuff. So I know a few really kind gifts that I got this year from Strongsville. There's a Dexter Press from Rob Cash Cards, or this 64 Aura Vision.
This is awesome.
And it's just a wonderful set. And so there's so many great ways you can collect post-war players. And none of this really breaks the bank. I mean, even the rookie wasn't a crazy card. So there wasn't a single card that I paid more than $300 for. And it was a great run of a great player worth remembering. So that's been so fun because it allowed me to learn the sets. It allowed me to just appreciate every single card that got in, and I think especially on those longer runs, it's easy to pop them off, but I'd encourage anyone that's doing a run is really sit and relish each card, because it's so much more meaningful that way. It's one thing to buy a card, but it's another thing to cherish the card. So That's been really, really special for me, is just be able to complete that run. I just am so grateful. And when I look at those cards, it's really a culmination of a lot of people, working together as a team to finish a run. It's not just me finishing a run. There's so many great hands involved that I talked to complete the run. So I think when you look at the culmination and comprehensive work, it becomes not me, but a team, which is this amazing community. So really grateful to have finished.
Well, Kaline is my mom's favorite player, or one of her favorite players when she was growing up. She lived she grew up in Michigan, grew up rooting for the Tigers, Mark the Bird Fidrich, Al Kaline, some great teams back then. So I've always had kind of a soft spot, even as a Cleveland fan, for Kaline, because you do hear the stories. He was an incredible person, and it goes beyond his talent on the diamond. So I also I brought out a few Kalines to show, because I know.
Oh yeah, there's the 74.
Yeah, that's the last one. Go back one more year to 73. I have the Topps Giants.
That's a great set.
I love this set. And then one of my favorite sets from the 50s, the 58.
Yeah.
So I don't ever imagine completing the player run like you, but I do have more K lines than I do some other players, and that's not by accident. So I know you had a huge chase on the last on the rookie, actually the last two, because you had what 55 and 54 for your last two, correct?
That's right. I I really wanted to pull the trigger on several of the 55 tops cards, but one of the parameters I wanted was a lot of those 55s are really tough on centering. And so I told myself I wasn't going to settle on a card. And that's where I was talking about, the power of community. I sent several copies to many people. I think of the Drew of Vintage Legacy, who kindly told me, don't buy that card. Don't buy that card many, many times.
Yeah.
And funny, being the cheapskate and frugal guy that I am, when I finally found the card that was, the exact copy that I wanted, it was $20 more than I had allocated in my budget, and I just couldn't swallow that. And finally, I think it was Drew who was like, "Hey, brother, like, kindly, I would like to tell you that $20 extra will be the best $20 investment that you will ever spend in terms of K-Line cards." And so I'm so glad that he pointed me towards buying the right copy, not just a copy. And I think that's also important, because I'm a guy that I love achievement, I love accomplishment. And so the way my brain works is like, oh, I see a card, like, that's what I need. I'm just going to go buy it, like pop, 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 pop. But I think what I miss is that richness and sweetness of really savoring each card and doing it in a way where every single card is quality. And there are a few cards that I look at when I started his early run that would I, love to look back and go upgrade? Sure. But at this point, I think I'm like, hey, these are just the cards I've got, and I'm going to just appreciate what I have and not need to look to my left or to my right. I don't need to upgrade, a 3 into a 6 or something like that. I just need to just be grateful. So I'm still working on that because I get so impatient collecting. So I get excited because cards are so amazing, but it's been cards have been such a great way for me to practice patience along the way. I don't know if you've had to learn that as well, but that's been something I've been growing in.
Yeah. Patience and card collecting go hand in hand, but it's not exactly a clean mixture. Yeah, at times it is oil and water. Because you, depending on what you collect, you can't always be patient. Sometimes you have to strike while the iron's hot. Sometimes you can afford to be patient. So it's a fine balance, but you definitely nailed it with buying the right copy, waiting for the right copy, and again, listening to Drew, who steered you in the right direction.
Yeah, well, it was a good mix of buying the right copy, but also, definitely going for, excuse me, wanting to go for a deal or two when the opportunity was there. But so I was able to finish the K-Line run.
Yep.
And then after that, I was trying, again, back to the drawing board. You go to the high of chasing the mountain. But along the way, I had caught my eye on this really, back to Anson's pre-war website. I had caught my eye. I was looking through vintage track and field sets, and this really kind of more rare, obscure set caught my eye. And I think a lot of people would be familiar with the T218 Champion set that collect vintage cards. It's pretty well known for a slew of really well-acclaimed boxers like Jack Johnson and several others. The facet for me for that set was that there are track and field cards. So I, had kind of gotten a few of those through the years. But as I was researching Anson's website, I realized that there was actually kind of, I call it the vintage parallel to that set, which is a more obscure version that actually used the same images of some of those cards, not all of them, but some of them. But they actually, instead of zooming in on the card, they actually have the background panned out a little bit more and provide a little bit more detail. And so that's the E229 National Licorice set. Nice. And the There's actually three versions. There's the E229. There's the I think it's the 353, which is I believe that's the Coasters set. And then there's also the Jergens version as well.
Okay.
So there's actually three different versions. But I wanted to go after, I'd love to own an example of the Coasters and the Jergens at some point, because those are just really cool backs. And there's also, I believe, a Canadian version as well, too. But I want to go after the National Licorice set, and I've been looking for about 2 years for these cards because they're just really hard to find. And they're certainly out there on eBay, but I had kind of gotten a gauge for what they went for, and most of them on eBay were overpriced. But then I ended up finding a complete album of them, complete set of them that just popped up. And so, like you said, you had to be opportunistic. And so I ended up getting an absolute steal for the entire set. I think I bought the entire set for around $220, which is fantastic. But for what some of these cards are in terms of rarity, just really hard to find. And I think they've got the best images out of any cards. You know, when I think about like artwork, you start thinking about like T3, Turkey Red, or other sets. Man, these come to mind. Just beautiful images in the background. I wish you could see more of these details in the background. But I mean, this card is so cool because I actually researched this thing that Forrest Smithson's holding in his hand. It's actually a Bible, and there's a real image of him running. He actually ran races with Bibles in his hand. I thought it was just like something that was like a ink mark, but no, that's a real part of the picture, which is really cool.
No way.
Another one, I believe this is I think this is Ray Urey, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, it's AC Gilbert. But just beautiful, like sunset pole vaulting. I'll just show one more, but Harry Hillman, just another beautiful. There's like all these. It's just funny seeing these guys competing, and then you have gentlemen in the background wearing their full 3-piece suit. That always cracks me up. But just an amazing set.
It's part of the reason why I love pre-war images and actual photographs, because you can see, or even like lithographs like that, because you can see what life was like back then. It tells a story beyond just the athlete. It tells a story about the time, in history, the period, and those images are truly beautiful.
Yeah, and again, you can see so many details in the background. You can learn about the grandstands. You can see how the people judged a high jump event, or all these little details that you never catch in just. Like, for instance, the T218 just has that zoomed in picture, and it has kind of like a green or blue background typically. Or if it's a boxer, it's got a red background or green or something like that.
Yep.
But I love that champion set because it E229, because there's so many beautiful details in that set. So it's amazing. So I just feel very grateful to have, again, just a diverse collection of sets like those. I bought a complete album of the Mulan Frank set from actually I've got it sitting right here. But another interesting collection is I bought this incredible album from Germany from the 1936 time period, and they created this Olympic set. It's called the Mulan Frank set, and it's got Jesse Owens and all these amazing images. But just to know that history, like, I bought it from Germany, so chances are it's either like second or third generation passed down from the folks that got it during the Olympics when it was produced in 1936. So it's just really special to own little pieces of history like that.
Well, think about what that survived. That wasn't just the Olympics in 1936. That was Nazi Germany, World War II, the entire Cold War, East Germany, West Germany, tear down this wall. It survived all of that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, I think I hadn't thought about that angle of like it's actually surviving Nazi Germany. Like, it is literally a fragment from a war zone.
Yep.
And I think it made its way into its hands to Dallas, Texas, and 2025 is unbelievable. So So again, things like that bring so much meaning. I think about my own childhood. Right before I got into collecting, I was during COVID, and I had found a set of childhood books that I used to read called Chip Hilton. It's a Chip Hilton sports series, and I was like, man, these are great. And so I was like, what if I had probably 10 or 15 of them, and I realized there was a set of 24. I was like, what if I just bought the whole set? And so as I looked for that whole set, I realized, wait a second, these are not the first editions. These are the kind of reprints, the second or third printing from the 90s and 2000s. What if I went after the first edition set? And so that was one of my first kind of collecting journeys, was to go after these first edition sets. And it was written by a Hall of Fame basketball coach named Claire B. Here's an example of one of the books. This is Hoop Crazy, one of my favorites. This is book 5. This book is really cool because when I picked it up, it actually had his autograph in here.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. But just to be able to connect kind of my childhood, a book that I loved, and where I really learned what it meant to be an athlete of integrity and character. Claire B's books really taught me that. Meant a lot. And there is a connection to cards here because as I was reading these and learning about more of Claire B's story, I realized that, he had actually framed these books around an athlete named Bob Davies. And Bob Davies was this Hall of Fame basketball player who played at Seton Hall against Claire B. And he actually beat Claire B's team in one of the NCAA tournament games. And after the game, Claire B coached for LIU. And apparently during that game, the LIU players were trash talking Davies the entire time. But Davies kept his cool and absolutely unleashed on them and just played really well and just played with a lot of composure. And so B called Davies the most complete athlete he's ever seen. He actually played baseball for Seton Hall, and I think he batted like 300 or something. Wow. He was crazy. But I ended up going after I finished, the first edition set of books. I ended up getting this Bob Davies card because it's just like this to me is literally like just a reflection back into my childhood. And so when I look at that card, I see more than just, it's Bob Davies' rookie card. This is literally my childhood of growing up and loving Coach Claire B's books and just learning how to be a man of integrity when you're faced with all kinds of trials. Mm-hmm. And so what a special way to collect cards. And then the last thing I'll share on the Claire B thing is one of the cool full circles was when I had bought a bunch of books. At one point, I was after the one kind of rare book that, there's one book that was about a $300 or $400 book. And I found a woman in Colorado that sold me a complete set, including that book. And so I was selling off some of the duplicates, and I had, listed, probably 15 of them on eBay. And I sold the books. I, gave someone a little bit of a deal, and their notification popped up of where it was shipping to. And it said New York. And I thought, that's interesting. That's where, B is from. And then I look at the shipping address, and the last name of the person that I bought it from is actually, forgot what her first name was, but it was whatever her first name was, last name B. And I thought, no way. So I sent her a message and said, hey, this is a pretty obscure set. Like, do you have a story behind it? Are you related to B by any chance? And she said, yes, I'm actually his granddaughter, and I'm working on getting all these sets so I can give these to my own kids to appreciate Claire B. And so it's just a really cool way that collecting brought itself full circle to where I came face to face with, Claire B's, at least from afar, with Claire B's family. And so and then I wrote them a really long note about the legacy and just the, gratefulness that I had for Claire B. So it's just really special when collecting comes full circle that way. So it was really, really meaningful.
That's awesome. Very cool story. I did not know that you had even gotten in contact with his family, just by happenstance of selling off some of the spare books. That's yeah. Talk about full circle.
Yeah, it's truly like, because I'll segue that into, to me, it's like, only God can orchestrate these kind of crazy stories.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was most passionate about this year was I learned about a player named Bobby Richardson. And Bobby, do you have some Bobby? I thought you were about to grab a Bobby card. We need to get you some Bobby, Kyle.
So there's a Bobby, I think it's a 58 Bobby Richardson at the card shop. And I might have to buy it after this.
Okay, yeah, and you can send. Bobby is the greatest TTM signer on the planet, and he'll do it with a huge smile, and he truly enjoys it. But I learned about Bobby's story, and Bobby was this incredible player for the Yankees who won, I think it was 3 World Series, and he is known because he actually won in 1960. He won the World Series MVP against the Pirates on the losing team. It was the famous year where Bill Mazeroski hit the home run in Game 7, I believe, to win the World Series. But Bobby had hit, I believe it was either 12 or 13 RBIs in the series, and was unanimously voted as MVP, but on the losing team. And so just what a great guy. And what I learned about Bobby is that Bobby actually encouraged Mickey Mantle in his faith and was the one that kind of brought Mantle in his later years as he's sitting in a hospital bed in Dallas in his faith, led him to his faith. And as I started doing more research on that story, I thought, wait a second, where in Dallas did this happen? And as I looked more into it, it was at Baylor Hospital in Dallas where Bobby encouraged Mickey Mantle. And that was the very hospital I was born at. And it was incredible because it was just a couple of years after I was born that happened. And a big part of my story is I'm a triplet and I was born at 28 weeks. We shouldn't have made it. And just the fact that we are here is just like this incredible, just so grateful. And so again, this whole full circle comes back to, collecting. So now when I see a picture of Bobby Richardson, I'm reminded of the gift of life. I'm reminded of the power of encouragement and how Bobby stood for others more than he did himself. And, to tie a bow to this, I started writing to Bobby back and forth. I'd send him a couple cards and write him a note and said, Bobby, can you sign some cards and can you put a Bible verse on each card? And so here's his rookie. I had him put Exodus 33:13, which was kind of a life verse for me this year. It was really fun to finish his rookie card and his complete run of Topps Run cards. But as I was doing that, I had this crazy idea. And I said, okay, I'm just going to totally see what happens here. I'm going to send Bobby a note along with this 57 rookie and just, first of all, thank him for everything that he's done in our kind of story. And I've told him my story in different letters, but I just wanted to thank him again for his legacy and just him being a great human and example for me. And I said, by the way, I'm going to be in your neck of the woods in about a month from now. Here's my number. Would you have any interest in meeting me up for breakfast? I'd be overjoyed if you would even consider it. And I get the card back in the mail, and he said, I'd be delighted. Here's my number. Call me anytime. Let's do it. And so I called him, and we talked on the phone, and he's telling me about how great his marriage of 70 years has been, just how wonderful it is to sign people's letters. And he ends up inviting me to breakfast. We go to breakfast. He invites me into his home, invites me to his ball fields. And I just look at moments like that in the hobby, and I'm just completely flabbergasted and blown away that, Bobby Richardson, World Series MVP, would want to have anything to do with this knucklehead from Texas. And I'm just, I don't even have any words for it. My heart is just so full when I think about a moment like that, and then I tie it to my own story at Baylor Hospital, I'm just moments like that just make me remind myself why this hobby is so beautiful and why it's so incredible to collect players' stories with meaning and purpose. When you look at a card, there's so much more. There's a story, there's a person behind it, and my heart is just exploding right now, even thinking about this story and thinking about these cards, because I am just reminded of so many great things when I look at these cards.
Yeah, that's between that, the granddaughter of Coach B, those are measuring sticks to me. When stuff like that happens in my life, I always think that is a sign that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm where I'm supposed to be on God's journey. And I feel like that has happened to you, where this is where you're supposed to be. You're doing the right things. You're sharing the right qualities, traits, etc. And you're from that, you're reaping the benefits of just some incredible experiences. For those of you who don't follow Matt or haven't seen it, first of all, go over to his channel and definitely hit the subscribe button. He has some phenomenal content over there. But also, he did a full video on the time he spent with Mr. Bobby Richardson. And it is 100% worth the watch. And Bobby seems like just an incredible human being. So, yeah.
Yeah, Bobby was just so full of joy. You could tell that it wasn't just an obligation because he's a nice guy. There was true delight and joy in his eyes as we talked and as he shared stories. So,
yeah,
really special. And I mean, your words are so kind, Kyle. I just feel very grateful to be in a position to get to share my story, get to share cards. I was telling a few guys that I'm blown away that, more than my mom and my wife and a couple of close friends would want to listen to me talk about cards. And I just feel like there's such an incredible opportunity. My whole MO is, I love showing cards and I love getting to be on this collecting journey. But, my heart is, I just hope to encourage and inspire as many folks as I can along the way. And the cards are just secondary. It's really about building this incredible community of people, getting to spend time with quality people like you and people all around the country now that, we talk about baseball cards, but we also talk about life and, the ups and downs of life too. It's not all the good or the cards we get. It's, hey, here's what I'm, walking through, and it's not easy. And so,
yep.
It's a privilege to be in this space for sure, and I'm grateful.
It's funny because as the world gets smaller, I find it harder and harder to meet people that I get along with in my community. But because the world's getting smaller, it's giving us an opportunity to meet people around the country that are like-minded and have similar interests, and that is building its own community. And that is what makes the hobby so special. And that's why I enjoy the YouTube community especially, because it's just people who love talking cards. Like you said, you can talk life with them, and there's genuine care and interest in each other. So, it's a great hobby, great community. That is for sure. So. Yeah,
well, again, I appreciate all that you do to make this hobby so wonderful. I think you've got a great combination of, you've got an unrivaled passion for baseball history and really, wanting to get into really like the deep, intricate details of players, of sets, of cards, of things that, frankly, not many people are unearthing. And so I just find it really meaningful because every time I click on one of your videos, I get to learn something, or I get to learn from someone that you're talking with. And so it's been so fun getting to, learn from you, but then also more than that, just get to know your story better and be in your world. So
Yep.
What a privilege, brother. Sure.
Agreed. And I enjoy, like, what Matt and I, he and I talk on the phone, every so often. I have a very busy schedule, so I'm not as quick to pick up the phone, and I apologize for that. But anytime you call, I'll answer. And right before he called Bobby Richardson, actually, he gave me a call and was telling me about it, and it was an awesome 30-minute conversation just to hear his joy and passion and excitement for what was about to take place. And I think you've said it in the past, but that far exceeded your expectations. So it's just a very fun hobby. All sorts of stories and all sorts of experiences that we otherwise wouldn't have. So excellent. Well, like I said, if you haven't subscribed to Matt, definitely go over to his channel. It'll be linked down below. Hope you've enjoyed listening to a synopsis told by him of why he collects what he collects, because I truly think his collection is one of the more unique I've ever seen. Not because necessarily of what he collects, but because his GOAT isn't a particular player necessarily. It's not a particular team. His GOAT is character traits and integrity, and that is a life lesson in and of itself. So he's the perfect guest for GOAT collecting in a very unique way, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me tonight.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I certainly have a lot to ways to grow in those traits, but I think that's why I enjoy collecting them, because I know I've got so much to grow in. But what a blessing, man, and thanks for having me on.
Yep. Thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, live free, dream big.